Hi folks, welcome back. I hope you're all doing well. This week I come to you with a paper that looks at the factors that affect software developer job satisfaction and productivity and how the two are related to each other. This paper is from the very recent International Conference on Software Engineering. So, the goal of this paper is to dig deeper into the relationship between the job satisfaction and productivity of software engineers. There has been a lot of previous work which establishes a firm link between satisfaction and productivity in general, and this paper tries to examine that in the specific context of software engineering. Now, right at the beginning, I want to point out that this paper looks at perceived productivity. That means the respondents are asked about how they feel about their productivity as opposed to looking at some hard objective metric like lines of code checked in. And you might very well say that, well, we shouldn't look at perceived productivity, we should look at objective measures of productivity. The problem is that in software engineering, we have not been able to establish a concrete measure of productivity. Lines of code has its shortcomings. It doesn't account for activities like design or mentoring junior developers. So keep that in mind as you look at what the authors found in this paper. Okay, let's start by looking at their methodology and population. This survey was carried out at Microsoft, obviously a large software company. The author sent out surveys with questions that respondents were asked to grade on a scale. For example, you might be asked to respond on a scale from strongly disagree to neutral to strongly agree, and so on. The first version of the survey was sent out to 4,000 people, and they looked at the results and tweaked their questions for a second version of the survey. The second and final survey was sent out to 5,000 people, of which they got 640 responses, which is around the typical 13% response rate that such surveys get. And out of those 640, 465 were from software developers. And this paper only focuses on those 465 responses from software developers. Alright, so let's get right into the results. This table shows a summary of the responses. The respondents were asked both how important they felt various factors were and also how satisfied they were with those factors in their work. Zooming in, we see that the three most important factors are who their manager is, how they perceive their productivity to be, and how rewards work in the organization, how fairly compensated they feel. There are a number of other factors, but you'll see that things like having a private office and documentation are way down at the bottom of the list. This is somewhat surprising because if you talk to a lot of software engineers, these are the things they will often complain about a lot. But while these things are low on the importance scale, you'll notice that they're also pretty low on the satisfaction scale. The next set of questions looked at what challenges software engineers face and how impactful they feel those challenges are. You'll see at the top of this list things like poor architecture, legacy code, finding the right information, too many dependencies, which is related to poor architecture and legacy code, and poor engineering tools. To me, a lot of these are symptoms of having to deal with large, old code bases. All developers love working on greenfield code and hate working on old, large code bases. But the fact of life is that the vast majority of software development work has to do with maintaining or improving an existing product. And I think these results are just a reflection of that reality. And they have an interesting correlation diagram here which shows which challenges correlate with which factors. So for example, if your manager is a challenge, that correlates with 16 other factors that are affected. So for example, a bad manager affects factors like appreciation shown for the work you do, or autonomy, or the feedback that you receive. The authors also gathered some very interesting time use data, and they clustered them into 3 clusters. You can see that this first cluster spends most of their time coding and very little of their time in meetings and email, whereas this last cluster, which I'm guessing is managers, spend very little of their time coding and a lot of time in meetings and email. So that's not too surprising. And to summarize, the factors that affected satisfaction the most were the ability to do impactful work, to be recognized as an important contributor, and having a positive work culture around them. And the factors that correlate the most with perceived productivity are having autonomy, the ability to do impactful work, being able to finish work quickly, and having a good, robust engineering system within which to work. And this finding is consistent with other studies as well. For example, they cite some previous work which did a similar survey at Google, and there they found that the statements that predicted perceived productivity the most were the ability to use the best tools and practices for software development, being enthusiastic about your job, and being able to use your personal judgment. So that was a quick look at a paper that tries to quantify the factors that go into job satisfaction and perceived productivity for software engineers and how they are related. It really underscores the importance of having a good manager, a good work culture, being able to do your job with autonomy. I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much.